Modernity has been sold as the pinnacle of human development.
We are told that we live in the best time in history, in a world where technology has eliminated many of the hardships that plagued past generations. We can communicate instantly with anyone on the planet, access an unlimited amount of information, and enjoy comforts that were unthinkable just a few decades ago. However, despite all these advantages, something fundamental seems to be missing. Instead of feeling more fulfilled, many people experience a sense of emptiness they can't explain. We were promised a better world, but somewhere along the way, that promise was broken. From a young age, we absorb the narrative that society advances in a linear and progressive manner. We believe that every innovation brings us closer to a fuller, more comfortable, more meaningful life. However, this belief is rarely questioned. It is assumed that technological and economic development automatically equates to greater well-being. But if that were true, why do more and more people feel dissatisfied? Modernity has created a paradox. Instead of bringing us closer to happiness, it has amplified the sense of disconnection. The problem does not lie in progress itself, but in the way human existence has been redefined within this new structure. Society has transformed life into an endless race, where the goal is not to live, but to produce and consume. We are taught that the key to fulfillment lies in constant growth, in the accumulation of goods, in optimizing time, in maximizing performance. But in the obsessive pursuit of these ideals, we have lost sight of what is essential. The promise of progress also sold us the illusion of connectivity. We were told that technology would bring us closer than ever before, that it would eliminate distances and facilitate human relationships. However, reality proves otherwise. Instant communication has not strengthened bonds, but made them more superficial. Digital interaction has replaced genuine contact, and constant exposure to images of other people's lives has turned comparison into a destructive habit. Never before has humanity had access to so many forms of interaction, yet the feeling of isolation continues to grow. Another pillar of this broken promise is the idea that knowledge would set us free. Access to information is practically unlimited, but instead of leading us to a deeper understanding of the world, it has plunged us into an ocean of distractions. We live bombarded by stimuli that fragment our attention and prevent us from stopping to reflect. Information has ceased to be a means to wisdom and has become a fast consumption product designed more to entertain than to enrich. The very structure of the system has shaped our aspirations and expectations. We are told that success is synonymous with status, that financial stability is the foundation of happiness, that life should be planned and measured in terms of achievements. But these goals, far from providing satisfaction, have generated a constant sense of inadequacy. Progress has imposed a mechanistic view of existence where a person's value is measured by their productivity and usefulness within the social machine. The underlying problem is that modernity has redefined the meaning of life in terms not designed for human well-being. Economic growth has been prioritized over personal development, entertainment over introspection, efficiency over meaning. We have been trained to pursue goals that ultimately do not fill the void we feel. The paradox of progress is that it has made us more efficient, but not happier, more connected, but not more united, more informed, but not wiser. This contradiction is not an accident or a mere system flaw. It is the inevitable consequence of a structure that prioritizes the functioning of society over individual fulfillment. Modern life has turned us into cogs in a machine that never stops, into participants in a game where the rules are already set, and where the only option seems to be to keep going without questioning where this path leads us. The structure of modern life has shaped people based on their utility within a system that never stops. From birth, each individual is prepared to fit into a machine that demands constant effort. We are educated with the idea that work is the essence of existence, the purpose that gives meaning to our days. However, in this model, work is rarely presented as a path to personal fulfillment. Instead, it becomes an unavoidable obligation that dictates the rhythm of life, absorbing time, energy, and health, without offering a real reward beyond mere survival. The workday is extended in subtle, relentless ways. Even when the workday ends, the mind remains trapped in worries that never cease. The technologies that promise to make life easier have blurred the boundaries between personal and professional life, keeping people in a constant state of availability. Fatigue is not just physical, but also mental. It is a feeling of ongoing wear, of being trapped in an endless cycle where each day feels like the last, with no room for pause or genuine rest. Productivity has been glorified as the ultimate virtue, and leisure has been relegated to a secondary role, seen as a waste of time rather than a fundamental need. The system imposes an invisible but persistent pressure to stay busy. Doing nothing becomes an unforgivable sin, as if existence itself depended on the ability to produce without rest. But in this endless race, exhaustion is inevitable. Anxiety and stress are not anomalies, but the natural state of those conditioned to measure their own worth based on their performance. Consumption emerges as the other pillar of this equation. For the system to function, it is not enough to work tirelessly. It is also necessary to spend. We have been taught to find satisfaction in the accumulation of goods, to see consumption as a path to happiness. But this happiness never arrives because the mechanism is designed to be insatiable. As soon as one product is obtained, the need for another appears. The illusion is created that satisfaction is always within reach, but in reality, it is a mirage that moves farther away with each step. Persuasive strategies have been perfected to the point that few people stop to question them. Advertising does not sell products, but aspirations. Consumption is associated with success, status, belonging. Each object acquired promises an improvement in life, a sense of fulfillment that never materializes. The disappointment that follows each purchase is not a mistake, but an essential part of the mechanism. Perpetual dissatisfaction is the fuel that keeps the wheel of consumption turning. This model has transformed our perception of time. People no longer live in the present, but are trapped in a constant anticipation of the future. We work waiting for the next break, buy waiting for the next upgrade, plan waiting for an ideal moment that never comes. The present becomes a mere means to reach a future that, when it finally materializes, turns out to be identical to the past. We live in an eternal promise of something better, without realizing that life is slipping away in the process. Human disconnection is another consequence of this model. Interactions have been commodified, reduced to transactions conducted with the same logic of efficiency and profitability that governs the rest of the system. Time has become a scarce resource, and relationships are affected by this mentality. Conversations are interrupted by notifications. Meetings are squeezed into overbooked schedules. Deep bonds weaken in an environment where distraction is the norm. Extreme individualism has been promoted as an ideal, but in reality, it has isolated people. Self-sufficiency has been glorified to the point that emotional dependence is seen as a weakness. The idea that each individual must be completely autonomous, able to face life without needing anyone else, has been normalized. But the reality is that human connection is a fundamental need, not an optional luxury. The absence of meaningful bonds leaves a void that cannot be filled with entertainment, success, or possessions. The result of this model is a society where loneliness has become a silent epidemic. This is not chosen solitude, the kind that allows introspection and personal growth, but solitude imposed by a system that fragments relationships and turns people into independent units operating within an impersonal framework. We live surrounded by others, but without a true sense of belonging. The lack of authentic connections generates a diffuse discomfort, a feeling of emptiness that we try to fill with distractions that never completely relieve it. This scenario has been normalized to the point that few stop to question it. It is accepted as the only possible way to live, as the inevitable price of progress. But beneath the surface of this apparent normality, something doesn't fit. There is a persistent feeling that something is missing, that life should not feel this way. However, expressing this discomfort is difficult because the dominant narrative keeps repeating that everything is better than ever, that the problem is not the system, but the individual's inability to adapt to it. In a world seemingly designed to keep us busy, productive, and distracted, the most essential question remains the same. For what? Modern life, with all its material splendor and technological advances, has stripped many people of a deep understanding of themselves. The disconnection, alienation, and emptiness felt daily are not merely side effects of a flawed system. They are the result of an even deeper disconnection, a disconnection from the self. The search for purpose, although seen as a priority of human existence, has dissolved in a web of external expectations, imposed goals, and societal ideals. We have been taught to find meaning outside ourselves, in wealth, in the accumulation of achievements, in social recognition. But this pursuit only leads to dissatisfaction because these achievements never seem to fill the inner void. The life presented to us as the most advanced, the most progressive, is actually built on an empty scaffolding. This emptiness is felt more acutely when one pauses for a moment, when one allows themselves to think for an instant and asks, amid all this noise, if this is really what was sought. Every time we immerse ourselves in the rhythm of social expectations, every time we go with the flow, we lose an important part of ourselves. We tell ourselves it's all part of the process, that success is just around a corner. But that corner never arrives. And the worst part is that we've gotten used to this feeling. We've learned to live with the anxiety that tomorrow will bring something better, when in reality, the future only reflects the present. Waking up to this emptiness is not easy or immediate. It is a painful process because it means facing the truth that the system does not have the answer it promised. The search for pleasure, comfort, and social validation only leads to dissatisfaction that grows over time. One might think This is a process experienced only by the most desperate, but in reality, it is a common experience for all who live at the center of the modern paradigm. The constant question, is this all, is a manifestation of a deeper desire, the desire for authenticity, the desire to find meaning that does not depend on what one has or what others think. This emptiness is not only related to the lack of clear personal goals, but also to a lack of connection with something greater that transcends us. You know, sometimes a simple realization can become a turning point, the beginning of a new way of seeing life, a path that doesn't measure our worth by what we own, but by who we truly are, by what we give, by what we're able to create when we finally break free from the invisible chains of a system that taught us to live for others' expectations, not for ourselves. And that's where the real crisis of modern society lies, not in a lack of progress, but in the emptiness that often comes with it. We've made so many advances, we've moved fast, but in doing so, we've drifted further and further away from what's essential. We've ended up lost in a kind of labyrinth, a place where success, consumption, and productivity are held up as the ultimate goals. But in the end, they're nothing more than illusions. And while we're busy chasing those illusions, we find ourselves caught in an endless loop, always reaching for a satisfaction that somehow remains just out of reach. But the truth is, what we really need isn't more stuff. It's not about achieving more or ticking off more boxes. What we truly need is to live with intention, to find our way back to what makes us human, to remember how to feel, how to slow down, how to be present, to reconnect with ourselves, with others, and with something deeper that can't be bought, earned, or measured. Because only when we stop looking for answers out there and start listening to what's within, do we realize something important. The meaning of life was never hidden in the rush, or in the noise, or in the race to keep up with a world that never stops moving. It's been in the stillness all along, in the quiet moments of honest thought, in the depth of real relationships, and in the connection to who we are, beneath the layers, beyond the roles, and outside the expectations. If any part of this message spoke to you, I want to ask you for a small favor. Would you consider liking this video, leaving a comment, or subscribing to the channel? I know that little like button might seem like a small thing, but believe me, it's actually a powerful way to help this message reach others who might really need it too. And before you go, you'll probably see a couple of suggested videos pop up on your screen. I could explain what they're about, but all I'll say is they go even deeper into the ideas we've explored here. If you're feeling ready to keep walking this path of self-discovery, I truly believe it's worth giving them a look. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this reflection. And I sincerely hope we meet again soon.